So we carry on with our explanation for Chapter 1, Introduction to Railway Planning, and we have reached Section 4. We will be talking about planning of railway operations. So we have covered the first sections, which is the railway as a business and the generalized cost function. And now we'll be talking about some of the basic operational requirements for different systems within the railway systems: the infrastructure, the train control system, and the vehicle, as well as the management that will be responsible for running this operation. So let's start. The vehicle that should have a number of operational requirements, and there are general ones that you should be finding in every vehicle, like it should be able to do safe operations. It should have a good suspension system, and for example, it should deliver passengers and cargo safely with a robust structure. So that's another basic operation requirements that many vehicles should have: high reliable subsystems, the doors, the windows, the motors, the pantograph, and more. Safety in collisions. This is crashworthiness, and in not every country there is a crashworthiness requirement, but recently this is becoming the trend, that vehicles should be tested for crashworthiness. And if you don't understand what is the word crashworthiness, you should be thinking about those cars which hit the walls and they are being tested by the airbag being released and making sure that the passenger or the dummy passenger inside is safe. Also, it should have a robust traction and braking equipment, resistance to corrosion and fatigue, low initial cost, and whole life cycle cost. So when we think about this is just very general requirements, and some operators would have a specific requirements. And the operators demands different vehicles for different services. The mainline service is different than the metro service or the tram service. So they will be asking for service that is for a vehicle that is designed for their service. They will be asking about protection from heat and cold specifically. That different countries have different temperature and different weather. A good ride quality and comfort system, ventilation, air conditioning, and definitely they will be asking about those entertainment systems, maybe toilets on board, catering, depending on the system they will be using. So the infrastructure operational requirement is it should be sound, it should be reliable, but there are other requirements. The station should be a kind of a landmark, an aesthetic, an architectural, iconic building. So aesthetics is good, station is good, accurate guidance and resilience, good transition between vertical and horizontal curves, acceptable running surface, safe method for changing tracks. For example, changing tracks in a slab track would be much harder than changing tracks in a and I mean by, for example, changing the whole substructure, not only the track itself, in comparison with doing it for ballast track. Long and predictable life, so it should be designed for a long operation, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 8 years, easily and economically maintained, communication with trains through axle counters, track circuits, automatic warning systems, and more, environmentally friendly. So this is just some of the operational requirements that you might have in infrastructure. Then you should be thinking about your train control system, and the train control system is very important for the operator because it affects the capacity, it affects the timetable, it affects the safety, it affects the schedule. So signaling is one of the train control functions. I think it's obvious by now. Requires communication between controllers and train. There should be always a communication between the control room and the trains and the drivers. Ensure safe operations of trains through a reliable timetable, a reliable signaling system, a proper mitigation measures, and an example of this, minimizing conflicting routes. Also must ensure optimal use of available paths. Make sure that you run a proper timetable that utilize the capacity available. Should control operations rapidly, economical, and should use standardized components. And this is the trend, like to use a standardized components, modular, that if anything fails, you can change it quickly. So what about the management? Even the management of a railway operations that is responsible for the operation might have different requirements. They should be flexible and people-oriented systems. So I think systems-oriented people, or a kind of, I think there is a mistake here. But flexible and systems-oriented people, they can document the operation in a technical and paper systems, and it can be using the computer, but they should have a proper technical and reporting systems involved. They should be able to run a stable and robust timetable that is not changing daily, that is suitable for passengers, that is suitable for them as operators, to make sure there is enough maintenance time, and they can make sure this schedule is always the schedule is always being done on time, or the timetable is being delivered. Use the right rolling stock for the right job. Make sure that they pick the right rolling stock, and minimize conflicting use of resources at all time, and even at a cost. Even if there was a cost, they should try to minimize conflicting use of resources, because this affects safety, but it affects how the complexity as well. So this was the last slide, and this was just an explanation of some of the requirements that you'll be needing for planning your operations. So if you think about, I will be running a new service, and I need to operate those trains, you should be thinking, is my infrastructure satisfying these requirements? Is my vehicle satisfying these requirements? Is my management satisfying these requirements? And this will be a good start. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Take care.